Thanks for taking the time to be here. This is the second CD-1 forum. There will hopefully be a third, maybe after the election when people finish campaigning. But Omar Sandoval, who's the chair of Yamhill County, is going to be kind of hosting this tonight, doing the questions that we prepared. And then you'll have a chance to put some questions in chat, which Connie and I will kind of monitor and ask as we needed. But thank you all for coming, and I'm going to give it over to Omar to introduce our candidates and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that. That was incredible. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omar Sandoval. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the chair of the Yamhill County Democrats. To some people, I'm just annoying, but that's neither here nor there. So before we go ahead and get started and move on to our candidates, which is why y'all are here, I wanted to go over a quick Bureau of Labor and Industries job responsibilities, which Connie and Lisa very kindly put together. So the Bureau of Labor and Industry job responsibilities include protect the rights of workers and individuals to equal, non-discriminatory treatment through the enforcement of anti-discrimination laws that apply to workplaces, housing, and public accommodations, to encourage and enforce compliance with state laws relating to wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment, to educate and train employers to understand and comply with both wage and hour and civil rights law, and to promote the development of highly skilled competitive workforce in Oregon through the apprenticeship program and through partnerships with government, labor, business, and educational institutions. Today we're going to learn some amazing things from two wonderful candidates, potentially a third. But it's important that we, ground ourselves in that and think about the issues that we're most passionate about. Very quickly, can anybody tell me when when election day is in Oregon?
May 17th.
May 17th, yes. So there is 26 days until election day. And I know some people have heard me say some people count it down as saying we have 26 days until election day. That is not at all the case. Election day is the last day to campaign and to vote. So we have 26 days. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn about our candidates, for y'all to ask questions, share this on Facebook, tell your friends about it. Because this is how we get good information passed from, getting to know our candidates. So I will stop talking and go ahead and introduce our candidates of today, starting with Christina. Christina, would you like to unmute yourself and do a 3-minute introduction?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Christina Stevenson. I was born and raised in Oregon. I'm a mom, I'm a civil rights attorney, and I'm a small business owner. And I'm running for labor commissioner because I fundamentally believe that Oregon should be the best place to live and work in this country. And look, I know that is a lofty goal, but it's only going to happen if we elect people who actually believe that. My day job is representing workers who are getting a raw deal when their employers are not following the laws that are enshrined by the Bureau of Labor and Industries. So over a decade, I've spent representing people in their cases of wage theft, race discrimination, unsafe workplaces. My tiny law firm has gone toe to toe with Wells Fargo, and we beat them in court. I'm damn proud of that. I also own and operate a business that I started at the kitchen table when my son was just 3 months old. And, I know what it's like to pay payroll, to pay the taxes, the benefits. And I know what it means, in March of 2020 or a banner year, whatever it is, to pay my employees well before I pay myself. And the way I see it, Oregon makes you a promise. If you work hard and you play by the rules, you'll have someone in your corner. Someone's looking out for you who wants you to win. And that's the promise I want to uphold as labor commissioner.
Thank you, Christina. That was great. And now next up, Casey.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you to Connie for wrangling us. You got us all, well, you got Christina and I here. I wish we could get Erin here because I love the difference that we see between the three of us, but it's great to be with all of you. So I'm Yamhill County Commissioner. Some of you know that. Apparently people know that I'm on a 2-to-1 conservative to liberal board. And while that's probably, this is not scripted, I think it's really important for you all to understand that every day as a county commissioner, I work for you all under conditions where I know that we might not win. And sometimes I lose on behalf of us, and I know what it's like, and it sucks. But every day, I fight for the people of Yamhill County for their health and for their safety. And when we win, that means that we're not going backward there. The Bureau of Labor and Industries desperately needs somebody who's ready to fight and they know what that means. So as a county commissioner, I work on culture change in agencies. My first day on the job, I was bullied by a department head. And that person is gone because people stood up to him in that department. It's an amazing thing when you set standards for departments that are based upon serving the public, and then you hold a department to that. I do that every day, and I also fight on the dais in the public setting, but it's also what goes on behind the scenes. It's the follow through. It's the making sure that staff have what they need. At the Bureau of Labor and Industries, Omar has explained what they do. Right now, what they need most of all is somebody to be both a fighter and a healer. I hear every day, unfortunately, from people for whom their first thing that they tell me is, BOLI failed me. It's devastating. I have people in our community who tell me, I don't know where to go. I was hurt, and I know that BOLI hasn't done the work that they need to do. It's devastating to hear that. And right now, my belief is that BOLI really needs to have that fighter on the outside and the healer on the inside. I'm also a lifelong first-generation certified organic vegetable and cannabis farmer. I live and farm with my wife and my kids on a river island in the Willamette. I grew up in Lincoln City, left-handed surfer. But what you really need to know is BOLI needs somebody to both heal it and to fight for it in order to be that very best civil rights watchdog that we all want it to be. And it's great to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey, and thank you, Christina, for those wonderful intros. Before we go any further, I see that everybody is muted, but I do want to remind you all to remain muted unless you're candidates. And that if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the candidates, we will be allotting time towards the end. We have a couple of preset questions. Please send them to Connie or to Lisa on the chat. So perfect, let's move on to our first question. And for this one, we will give our candidates 2 to 3 minutes to answer. And we will go ahead and start with Casey for this one. Casey, what in your experience has allowed you to enforce compliance laws with state laws related to wages, hours, and terms of employment?
Yeah, so the thing that I do at Yamhill County, and sorry, there's somebody canning behind me. So what I do at Yamhill County every day is support staff who are doing the public service mission. I'm going to do the same thing at the Bureau of Labor and Industries, which is to talk with staff, to learn what they need, to listen really closely to industry and to workers and to labor, to find out really like what are the things that they need along the way, what are the stumbling blocks, what are the barriers. And I will tell you that supporting staff is a never-ending process, but it's so rewarding when people get the satisfaction out of public service. So that's really the enforcing and ensuring compliance is supporting staff at this wonderful agency. And I cut it short because there are so many more questions that we can talk about.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey. And Christina, I will kick it off to you. I'm going to repeat the question just again, and then I'll kick it off to you. So what in your experience has allowed you to enforce compliance with state laws related to wages, hours, and terms of employment?
Yeah, so you already heard this is one of the main components of the job is enforcing the laws, right? And so I have spent well over a decade. I mean, I've had BOLI on speed dial for over a decade at this point, spent tens of thousands of hours with the laws that BOLI enforces. So there is just nobody who's going to be better prepared to do what needs to be done to make sure they're enforced, right? So one of the questions, how are we going to enforce wage laws? I mean, I'll tell you, in my experience, I've represented folks that have had their wages stolen. You know, I spent about 5 years going up against one employer that had cheated hundreds of employees out of their wages, you know, good 6 figures of wages. And I'll tell you, you know, about 3 years into that fight, the employer finally said, okay, fine, we'll pay these wages back. We'll pay the penalties that we owe these employees. And they signed on the dotted line. And then they said, actually, never mind. We're just going to close up shop. We're not going to pay these employees back. And so, you know, I think at that point, I had been paid $0. Okay. So I think a lot of people would say, well, geez, I did my best, right? But I can't do anymore. But what I did is I spent the next 2 years using every tool in the toolbox to hold that bad actor accountable. So that meant suing the owner, the co-owner, the trust that the guy set up to get out of it, the DBAs, the successor entities. And that is how we have to be at BOLI in order to get our laws enforced. So right now, you know, substantiated wage and hour claims. So these are ones that have actually, they know that the people have stolen wages. Only about 16% of those have penalties assessed to them. And only 1% of those are collected. This is during a 6-year period. And we need somebody who has the experience and the knowledge to know, look, we have a lot of complicated legal situations now. We've got joint employers, successor employers. We've got people being misclassified as independent contractors. In order to make sure that our laws are enforced, it's important to have that experience, and that's what I have.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that Christina is totally right. Like this is one of the biggest issues in terms of just like pure people in Oregon are struggling is wage theft.
Yeah. Thank you, Christina and Casey, for that. Moving on to our second question, and we'll start it off with Christina for this one. What do you see as the biggest challenge for the labor board, and how would you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is something that a lot of our state agencies are not immune to, right? Which is the historic disinvestment. So we've got less than half the staff at BOLI that there was 40 years ago. And of course, Oregon's only gotten bigger during that time. So what that means is we have to be smarter with the money we do have. And that's why I want us to be implementing this program. It's called strategic enforcement. And it's all in the name. It's using your money strategically to make sure that we are doing the best to get at our worst offenders in the system. And that is the challenge for us, is using our money wisely, those taxpayer dollars. And then, you know, I will say another exciting challenge for us is we've got these enormous workforce shortages right now. You know, these mismatches between what the skill level is and what our industries are needing. And so we have a historic one-time investment into our apprenticeship program, and that is going to be an exciting place for us to be investing and expanding our apprenticeship program. So we often think of apprenticeships in our building trades, but we are, if we are able to be flexible and look at our administrative rules and make them a little bit more flexible, we can accommodate things like nursing, high-tech manufacturing, education. When you think of places where, gosh, it's not a surprise we're going to need healthcare workers. That's a huge challenge for our state. Where we can meet that challenge is through expanding our apprenticeship model at BOLI.
Awesome.
And Omar, you don't need to ask me the question again. I got it. And I will say that it's two opposite ends of a spectrum is really the biggest challenge that I see at BOLI. And the first one is that most people in the state of Oregon don't know what BOLI does and don't know how to access services there. But on the polar opposite of that is that so many people in Oregon who've gone to BOLI have felt failed. They've lost trust in government because they went to the one agency that they thought was going to help them, and it didn't help them. And I get these messages all the time from people, phone calls, texts, voicemails, instant messages, really about that, the failure of BOLI to act on the behalf of a worker, an employee, or of a person seeking services in the community. But it's the flip side of not knowing anything about where to go for help. And so one of the things I think is very important, and it's really why Christina and I were just at an interview with Willamette Week, and we talked a little bit about this, but it really feels very, very important to have an elected official at BOLI, because the elected official just like fundamentally knows that they have to communicate with the public. It's like part of our DNA is to tell people about what we do, and both the good work and the bad work, right? And so that's really the thing that BOLI needs to have right now, in my view, the failure and the not knowing. And it's so fun that Christina and I just saw each other and talked about some of these issues. It's like, oh, can I talk about something different?
That's awesome. And so this is a question that's not on here, but when does this endorsement come out?
I don't know. I don't know if they said.
Okay.
They did not. I do know that the Oregonians endorsement, which we haven't gone to yet, right? We haven't gone to it. Okay. Oh, it is May 1st, along with the governor endorsements. So anything about us will be dramatically overshadowed by.
No, I look forward to all of those, kind of like a kid on Christmas morning, and just I can't wait to see them. So perfect. Moving on to our next question, and we'll start it off with Casey. So Casey, what do you see as your biggest strength in working with the labor board?
Whoa, sorry. It's maybe a POTUS helicopter. It's really loud here. So my greatest strength in working with labor, yeah. Well, so the thing that I have is I have everyday working experience with being the mediator, the decision maker in contract negotiations. So I'm not advocating for them or I'm not advocating against them. I'm looking at what does this county, what does this agency need, both from staff and from the public? How do we have the resources we need in order to pay people well? We know we need to treat them well. And so on a daily basis, I work with our labor unions, and so I understand what it takes to be not the advocate, but the arbiter in a really effective way, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Casey. What about you, Christina?
So was the question about labor unions or about the Bureau?
Yeah, so the question is, what do you see as your biggest strength in working with the labor board?
Well, so I would say a couple of things. So, the labor commissioner's job is to protect and defend the civil rights of Oregonians, something that I've been doing for over a decade, and enforce the wage laws. But what we haven't talked about too much is the fact I'm also an employer, right? So I know what it is like to comply with these laws myself, and I have a really unique vantage point that I think is going to be really helpful for our small businesses in helping them comply with the laws. Because look, it is complicated. I mean, the organized statutes in this area is probably 3 inches thick with double-sided 10-point font, right? So if we want to make it accessible, we want to empower our businesses. Most of them are good businesses. We want them to be empowered to do the right thing. And I'm going to be able to have a really a unique window based on, the data I have from my own experience. And then I'm going to be asking the Bureau to look at the data as well, because we can see where the weak spots are. Our employers, let's say our employers from 6 to 24 employees, maybe they're having trouble with our disability laws, which I'm willing to bet they are. And what can we do to reinforce that area for them? I can tell you, if they had a form for when they need to do an accommodation request. I mean, these things are really, in the weeds, but that's where I've been. I am in the technical details, because that is actually, where the rubber meets the road for these folks. Is like, how am I going to comply with the law? I want to make it as simple and accessible, easy as possible, because, best case scenario, perfect world, we have empowered our employers so well, we don't even have complaints. I mean, that's the dream. And I think I'm going to be able to help from both of those vantage points.
And I apologize, I totally heard that. I heard a different question. So I just wanted to add that really for me, the experience is one of Yamhill County Commissioner and county commissioners general, elected officials have to make hard decisions all the time. And sometimes, quite often, they take the easiest road. And what I found time and time again is that it's way more fun to do what's right. In fact, this morning, I did what was right, and I pissed off a lot of people. But it's very, very important, especially at BOLI, to do what's right, not what's most popular.
So, thank you both for that. So the next question that we have is, how would you promote the development of skilled workers through apprenticeships or partnerships with government, labor, business, and educational institutions? And we'll start it off with Christina for this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one priority, honestly. We've got these workforce shortages that are, they're workforce crisis in some industries, right? Like healthcare. And so we have got to be making sure that our apprenticeships are actually accessible. And so when I say actually accessible, what I mean is we're not graduating everybody that we want to, especially from diverse populations in our apprenticeship programs. We're not meeting the most basic key performance indicators that are set by the legislature in those areas. So how we make them accessible, it's really, if you think about it, it's simple stuff like childcare, transportation, the tools that are needed for these programs. And so BOLI is going to be a steward of those dollars that are coming from the Future Ready Oregon one-time investment. And that is going to be key to us implementing more accessible apprenticeship programs. But the other thing is, look, it's hustle, honestly. That's kind of what it is being a business owner too, right? It's hustle, and it's making the connections. It's going and making the connections with our K-12 partners, and making the case that, number one, we know that kids that are involved in career technical education have better outcomes in school, regardless of what they do. If they go into apprenticeships, they go to something else, they have better outcomes. So let's get them in the CTE, let's get them into pre-apprenticeship programs at 16, 17 years old, and then they'll have a seamless pathway into these apprenticeships where, you could be making $40, $50 an hour. Those are good jobs, right? And actually keeping some of our kiddos in our rural communities too, so they don't have to they don't have to leave to find a job because we've created a pathway for them to actually continue to invest in their own community. So that is going to be the absolute top priority for me.
And Omar, I'm happy to just jump in. I got the gist, even if I didn't get the details from Christina's very thorough answer. And I will say, so I get to be spotlighted. Spotlit. It says spotlighted, but I would go with spotlit. So I think it's really important for you all to know that this is an historic investment that Christina has referred to. It's $200 million, a one-time infusion of general fund dollars from the state and American Rescue Plan dollars. The problem is that we have to spend it well. And Oregon has a track record of spending a lot of money to not get a lot done. So I spent a lot of time on this issue because I'm on the executive committee of the Willamette Workforce Partnership, which is one of the state, it's one of the regional entities that spends federal and state dollars on workforce training. It takes a lot of money to train one person through the Willamette Workforce Partnership or any of the other local workforce boards. What I realized, so I was sitting in the Talent Summit, which happens every year. It's the Higher Ed Coordinating Council's annual meeting. And people were talking in very big words about what they hope to achieve with the money that's supposed to go to apprenticeships and training at an urgent time, and a time of crisis, as Christina noted. And I realized that it was all focused on how are we going to spend this money? And there was very little concern about the individual and what constitutes success. So my goal, and what I sit on these boards every day, spending public dollars to train people. And what I realized in that moment, sitting there and listening to these very big experts, was that what we need to do is we need to ask, what does success look like for you, the kid, the trainee, the person from rural Oregon, the person from urban Oregon, the woman who's struggling, who has a history of domestic violence in her past? What does it look like for you? And then every single program needs to be targeted to the success as defined by the person. And that's going to be really, really, bye, Aaron. We didn't even talk about this. It's really important, and it's really hard with government money because we want to have like data and we want to have metrics that we say, look, we did this with this money. But what we really, in my, I've thought about this probably way too much. We need to have the success be what each individual person says constitutes success for them. And that is not really a campaign answer to a campaign question, but it's something I think we need to think about.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey.
Omar, do you want to go to there's a couple of questions in chat. Do you want to go to those?
Yes. Let's go ahead and go with those. So I am not seeing those. So Lisa, if you want to take over for those.
Well, there's one. What BOLI laws would you target to change?
Perfect. Yeah. Let's go ahead and start off with Casey for that one.
Well, so one thing, so as a county commissioner, we allow organizations to use our bonding authority in order to achieve a more favorable loan when they issue bonds. So Friendsview Retirement Community, which is a giant retirement community in Newburgh, George Fox University, and Linfield University have all come to the county to use our bonding authority to get a lower interest rate. What I realize is, so prevailing wage rates are something that BOLI has a lot of responsibility for. And basically that's, you have to pay a very particular amount of money for each job, each worker on a job that uses public funds. My view is that bonding authority is a public fund, because without it, these organizations would never be able to do the work that they're doing. So extending prevailing wage rate to bonding authority is an important part of it for me. But honestly, I'm in Northwest Portland. I'm about a mile from the Justice Center, where there were 200 days of protests after George Floyd's murder. One of the things that I think we have right now, but we need to extend, is BOLI's ability to investigate civil rights complaints against police departments. And that's a very particular thing that BOLI can do, but the authority does need to be extended. And so that would be a change that I would seek at the legislature. And, I work with legislators all the time on a myriad of issues, from water to homelessness. It's a very familiar territory to me. And I will say that differently than Christina, but it's also, she can tell you about it too. You have so much experience as well.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Christina, what BOLI laws would you target to change?
When it comes to the role of the labor commissioner's role is to enforce the existing laws. So in terms of changing laws, that is the realm of the legislature, and as a person who has gone down there myself, I this is my first kind of foray into public policy, was my own experience as a caregiver for a dying parent. And when my dad was passing away, I came to learn that bereavement leave, so the fact, like, my leave was protected while I was caring for my dad, but as soon as he passed away, my employer could fire me. And I just thought, this is not how we should be in Oregon, right? This is not the values that we hold. So I rallied my grief support group. We showed up in Salem. We got it passed. We got bereavement leave added to the Oregon Family Medical Leave Act. So employers can't just fire you the second the person you're caring for passes away. And I think there's an absolute role for that kind of advocacy. I've been a part of it, helping to pass the paid family medical leave insurance as well, the Oregon Workplace Fairness Act, pregnancy accommodations, an OSHA retaliation statute. So I will leave that good work to the legislature. And what I would say is, all of these laws that we've passed, important laws to protect our workers and have the kind of workplaces that we all desire as Oregonians, that they're meaningless, right, if they're not enforced. And that's the job of this agency, is to enforce the laws that are passed. And that's what I intend to do.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. Lisa,
We've
go
got
ahead.
a couple more in chat here. Has everyone finished answering that? Did we get everyone's answer to that one?
Yep.
Okay.
I think so.
Business always complain about regulations. How would you work to satisfy workers' needs versus business regulations? It's a matter of, how would you balance the two?
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I think about this, I think about it in a really practical way. So what I think about is the fact that there's a huge universe of laws, and it can be really, really overwhelming for an employer to say, oh my gosh, look at all this regulation. But what I would like us to do is to help our employers say, okay, you got 7 employees, you're public, private, you're in this industry. Actually, this is the universe of laws that apply to you. Give them a little bit of help and repose that, okay, you've got your universe down to this amount, and we'll help you comply. I mean, BOLI provides technical assistance to employers. They can call us up anytime and ask, hey, what do I do? They provide trainings. They'll go on site to employers. They have books that go through all of these different regulations, and I think that the piece that could be really bolstered is just that connection, right? The connection that needs to happen, that trust that needs to be built to the point, and I want to be built to the point where our employers feel comfortable enough to come to us when they made a mistake. oh my gosh, I just realized I, was making this deduction and now I'm finding out it's an unlawful deduction. How do I fix it? Right. That's the kind of trust that is gonna take time, and it's a really intentional process that we want we got all these great micro businesses, especially, a lot of people of color, entrepreneurs. We've got a lot of amazing homegrown businesses in Oregon. Like, let's help them succeed. And another way that we help them succeed is by enforcing our wage and hour laws, right? Because it is an unfair advantage to our good employers if they've got to compete with someone whose business model is wage theft. So all of these things are interconnected. And the other thing I want our business owners to be thinking about when they think about BOLI is, gosh, I'm not being able to find the skilled workforce I need. Come to BOLI, let us help you. You're not just going to have to get sent this 167-page PDF on how do I make an apprenticeship. We'll actually help you develop that apprenticeship so that you can get the skilled workforce you need.
It's so fun listening. Just again, it's been so fun listening to Christina, having just had this conversation. But the in person is way more fun. So I will say that, yeah, do you agree? It looks like you agree. Okay, that's good. So I think about this. So I'm a vegetable farmer, but I've also been a cannabis farmer. My experience with the OLCC, the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, we changed our name, so I have to think about it. Really informs a lot of the how I see the relationship between the regulator, the state, and the regulated, which is the business. And it's really different, though, with the Bureau of Labor and Industries, because it's the responsibility of the business. So it's not, to me, it's not really how do you balance the worker and the business, because it's about business's responsibility and workers' rights. And so it's a fundamentally different relationship that the agency will have and has and should have with workers as opposed to businesses. We need to educate businesses. We also need to educate workers so that they know their rights. But the difference is that we are enforcing the rights and enforcing the laws on the businesses on behalf of the workers. And so I see it as a fundamentally mismatched or power differential relationship. And that's kind of how I bring it into it, is that it is the workers' rights and the employer's responsibilities. Also, it's fun to talk about cannabis. So if you guys want to talk about cannabis, we can too.
Catherine, did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, my name's not Catherine, by the way. My name is Michael. I'm just, Catherine is my mother.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at with the screens on there. Okay, Michael.
Yes, because I'm using her computer, so it registers as Catherine, which is my mother. So, yeah, I had a couple questions that I posted in chat, for example. That I'm not sure anyone was seeing. Because I sent Connie, it seems as if I sent Connie Chen some things that were direct messages. Well, I guess I can just read them off in the chat then, I guess. In fact, it was actually 3 questions sort of that I sent. So I also apologize because it seems as if I was taking up the conversation by asking quite a few questions at once. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not so good thing.
There's a question. Okay, I'm going to ask a few of them. Let's see. There's a few questions here. One of them is, let's see if we can get to these quickly. How would you protect, okay, one thing about age discrimination in hiring, it's something that you can't really say someone's doing, but it's always easy to say, we found a better fit, or we have someone with better skills. how would you actually enforce the laws that protect older workers who now, because of inflation, have to go back to work or whatever, have to go back to work? And Casey, you want to try that first?
Yeah, I totally couldn't remember which of us had done the last one. This is a really important area of law right now for the state, obviously with workers going back, but honestly with an aging workforce as well. So the very important thing is to make sure that workers know their rights around age discrimination, both in hiring practices and retaining employees and how workers are treated. And so for me, the most important thing will be to make sure that we communicate fully to workers in the languages, in the places, from the people that they trust about their rights. And it's a real basic, like, good governance is to talk to people in the words that they understand about the rights that they have. And I hear this regularly from people about who have concerns, and that they sometimes don't know where to go for help, and they don't trust that BOLI is going to be there for them. And it partly, and I forget your name, but I will say that it's partly because when you feel like you've been wronged, it's a very vulnerable spot to be in, and it's really hard to ask for help. And then it's hard to have to explain to 4 different people the thing that you think is a problem that you don't know where to go for help with. I encounter that, unfortunately, all the time in my work as a county commissioner, because people come to me when they don't know where else to go.
Christine?
Yeah, I mean, so taking off the kind of labor commissioner and enforcer hat for a second, I'll tell you that I actually worked with AARP. This is what I do in my free time for fun, okay, is I go and I help draft these laws. And one of them was to get better age discrimination protections, because it's really, really true that this is an issue. And Oregon has a kind of really unique statute in that it protects people who are 18 and over. So very, very different than federal law, which is really geared at the older workers. So that dynamic has set us up for some really difficult conversations about what age discrimination looks like. But I think the other piece that is really important for us at BOLI is how we train our investigators. So, I mean, look, we're just enforcing an existing law, but the law protects people who are discriminated against in the terms and conditions of their employment, and of course in pre-employment as well. And so I want us to, there's kind of in the law, there's like low-hanging fruit of discrimination, and those are termination, demotion. But any of us who have ever worked or try to get a job, we know there is discrimination that isn't fitting into one of those low-hanging fruit buckets, right? And so I want our investigators to recognize that and just follow the law, and which has a bucket for those things, terms and conditions, and recognize that when they're taking on these investigations.
A couple more questions. If the farm worker overtime bill had not been dealt with in the legislature, and as the opponents were farm workers said, it was left to the labor commissioner, how would you have proceeded? Christine, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one for me. So there's just zero question that farm workers were excluded from overtime for racist reasons. I mean, so this was a policy that needed to change. And I'll tell you what, Washington State, their Supreme Court decided a subset of agricultural workers that it was against Washington State's constitution for those people to be excluded from overtime, right? And so what did I do in my free time? I got together a couple of lawyers and I said, how can we do this in Oregon? Certainly this has to be unlawful under our constitution as well. And in the course of that discussion, what I did is I looked at our Oregon administrative rules, the ones that BOLI uses, the ones that say farm workers can't get overtime. And every administrative rule, it has to have a statutory backup to it. So I looked at the administrative rule and it said, wait a second, this statutory backup that was repealed in 2017. And that discovery is part of the process of what got us to farm worker overtime in this state. I mean, of course, there's, legislature passed it, but it was a policy that was well ready to be well overdue to be overturned. And of course, I mean, I would have to recognize though, like farming is essential. I mean, there's no question. Farming, like we got to feed ourselves. So I think it's appropriate and incumbent upon the legislature to step in when there are fundamental things like that we need to be supported. We don't want our family farmers going out of business.
Hey, Casey?
Yeah, so I forget if I've told you about this. So I'm a vegetable farmer. I grow a little bit of cannabis. We're actually growing hemp this year. It's technically cannabis. I chose as both a county commissioner and a farmer to testify in support of farm worker overtime because it was very important for the legislature to help farms with transitioning from no overtime to overtime. The cash, the compensation, the help that these farms need in order to transition, especially for farms that are in a position where they don't decide their what they're getting for their crop. So they can't set their prices. We are in a position where we've always been able to, within reason, set our prices. The thing that I know is that BOLI could have enforced farm worker overtime and developed rules for farm worker overtime before the legislature. And it's actually hard to think about right now, but it could have been happening basically as soon as the lawsuit came down and Commissioner Hoyle said, I'm going to do it if the legislature doesn't. And that would have been an opportunity to take the lead, to really do the work, even though it's hard, to be the one to do the hard work.
Thank you for those answers. We have one more I see here, and that's from Kathy Dorner. How would you protect transient workers' rights? And I guess, Casey, do you want to start with that one?
Yes, absolutely. So one of my priorities is to make sure that people know their rights and have them communicated in the language by the people that they trust all across Oregon. It's a really basic expectation that BOLI should be meeting right now. What I do as Yamhill County Commissioner is, and elected officials who are executives do this all the time, is they set expectations of their agency. Then they make sure that staff have the tools that they need to get the work done. And then the leader holds them accountable. I will be holding staff accountable for the work of communicating to transient workers from the people that they trust. It's very challenging to find people and to talk to them. We learned this at Yamhill County during the pandemic early days, is that we were, for example, translating all of our materials into Spanish and we had them on a website. And we learned very quickly that nobody understood them because it was somebody who had taken 4 years of college Spanish was doing the translation, and very few people who needed to be communicated with, who were in migrant communities, actually were looking at a website like on a phone or on a computer. And so what we started doing was having grandmas translate and putting it on a piece of bright pink paper and having them take it to their communities. And the same has to happen on an ongoing basis so that people know their rights and they know where to go for that help.
Thank you, Christine. And if anyone has any last questions, they want to type it in chat. I think we have time for one more quick one.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with Casey. We've got to be communicating with people in the modes and the languages that they communicate in. And when it comes to transient workers, folks that are maybe in a couple of different places in terms of who's their employer and where they're employed, right? This is the responsibility. This is where the agency has to be adding value. And that is in our intake process, this is very, very complicated legal work, but you got to spot the issue because number one, let's say you're working at a temp agency and that temp agency places you at a company and you get discriminated against, and then that company terminates you, and then the temp company doesn't offer you any jobs anymore, right? That happens quite a lot. And that's actually two employers that need to be held accountable, right? So it's spotting the issue and knowing about the complicated legal relationships. And that's what I want to train our folks to be doing, is to make sure that we're casting a wide enough net in this complicated world that we are able to get people the wages they earned, right? To get them the accountability that they deserve.
And I will say it's my job to agree with Christina, not the other way around. Come on. And so I just want to say that I add my agreement that that intake process it's a precarious time, and how people are treated in that is so very important.
We have two questions. I know we're running out of time, so if I can just ask you guys to take a minute or two for each question, I'll try to get them both in. What is BOLI's role in dealing with the great resignation of so many employees and the burden on the employees that are still working? Casey, I guess you start.
Sure. I mean, I think that one of BOLI's, it sounds funny, but BOLI has to be there. So when that worker is like, I am done here and is looking for other work, we either can help them with training, or we can help them to make sure that their rights are upheld as they search for a good job. And I will say that on the training side of things, Christina has touched on it, but childcare is a very important component of what the state is able to pay for. The other thing that the state can pay for is transportation. So childcare and transportation, the trainees have those two things. They can seize the world, right? And we also bring more people back into the workforce. At the Talent Summit, what was his name? John Tapania from Eco Northwest noted that there are many different reasons why there are fewer people in the workforce. One thing he didn't say is that we actually have had a lot of people die of COVID. This is the tragic and honest truth in the state of Oregon as well as around the country. But we've also had a dramatic decrease in immigration into the US and into Oregon because of policies at the border of the former administration. And we have people aging out of the workforce. And on top of that, we have primarily women who can't get back into work because they don't have childcare, either that's steady, that works for them, or that they can afford.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Christine?
Oh my goodness. So, when it comes to the Great Resignation, of course, number one priority is getting folks into family wage jobs that where they're protected at work. And that is definitely the apprenticeship program is where we can fill that need at BOLI. But I mean, what I heard in the question though was how the Great Resignation really has affected the folks who stayed, right? And that's a complicated issue. But what I would say is that there is a know your rights piece, which is really underappreciated. That it is your mental health. That is health. That is health. I mean, we need to be treating people with mental health issues the same as, if I broke my leg and I needed help getting to work, you got to make the law requires it, in fact, that you make those same accommodations. And so, recognizing like the burnout has probably gotten to a level where it constitutes a legally protected disability. And our employers with 6 or more employees, they've got to make accommodations for that. And if you've got 25 or more, you've got to provide protected leave for that. I mean, honestly, like this is our one life. This is our one state. We have got to have workplaces that meet our values. And I think that that's what we deserve.
Thank you. Michael, do you have a quick question you want to ask? Michael?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions in the chat, and I feel as if I was the only one, never really got to ask much of a question. I was wondering how you would deal with rural broadband in the workforce,
Yeah.
as well as certain some management positions. I think there's a certain level of incompetence in certain management positions in certain labor places that is a bit, that doesn't really work out great for employers, because certain management positions, I mean, they tend to be, some people just tend to be lazy or just don't do much of the work really. Sometimes in certain areas. I'm just wondering how what's your kind of position, and how would you deal with those kind of things?
Okay, good question. I think we're starting with Christina.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to bad managers and bad management, I think BOLI's role is really to empower our employers through our training to understand their responsibilities and what it means to be a good manager, and in a lot of ways includes creating a safe work environment, a work environment that is free of discrimination. And that is really what BOLI's role is, I mean, going to be in that.
And then I can add, it's hard to imagine what role BOLI has in expanding broadband. But you do touch on an important subject, was that it's just that there's a lot of people who now have the ability to work from home. It's amazing, really. Like I was a work from home or work from not the office county commissioner, and it blew people's minds in the office. Like he's not in the office. And it turns out that if you're in the office, the only people you see are the people you work with, rather than the general public, which is who I am, elected to represent. Broadband is a very important thing, and we're putting some money into it, and it has a lot of complications, Michael. On the bad manager or the incompetent manager side of things, Christina really made an important observation about what BOLI can do out in the state of Oregon. And I will say that within the agency is also an important role for the labor commissioner, is to make sure that managers at BOLI have the tools that they need, have expectations set by the commissioner of labor and industries, and that they're held to those standards and they're held accountable for their work and for the work of their staff. I have the experience, for better or worse, in doing that work at the county, in really setting expectations, holding people accountable, and really moving a department from low morale to joy, like joy in service of the public. It's amazing how awesome it can be to pave a road and make somebody happy if you're really like focused on the joy of the public service, but you can't do that when you have bad managers.
And Omar is going to take over and ask closing statements.
Awesome, perfect. And thank you for all those audience questions. Those were amazing. I was taking a lot of notes over here. So we will give everyone, two candidates, 2 minutes to answer this very plain but can be difficult question. Why should we vote for you? And I forgot the order. So Lisa, would you remind me?
I think Casey starts because he answered the last question last time.
Oh, excellent. Perfect.
I think it's true. And it's good that this is the last question. It's starting to get dark out here. Really, I've spent the last 4 years really fighting for the people of Yamhill County. BOLI is, in many ways and in many areas, failing the people of Oregon. I know what it's like. I know the work that it takes to really uplift an agency, to hold people accountable while communicating to the public what's happening so that we're at the most transparent we can be. It's not easy work, but it's so very important because it's your rights. It's my rights. The other thing that I'm really looking forward to is really communicating those rights to you. Because again, as an elected official, my number one duty is to communicate to you the things that we're doing so that there is the most transparency possible. It's the basis of democracy in Oregon and across the country. And keeping that and upholding it is so very important to me. So knowing your rights is the thing that we will have. And I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the questions. And I will say thank you so much to Christina for being able to do a back and forth once again today.
And Casey, if you're staying on, Casey, for a little bit. Casey, are you staying on?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Christina?
So, I've been endorsed by the last 5 labor commissioners, Senator Merkley, Governor Roberts, a host of elected officials, all 30 plus organizations, organized labor representing, nurses, grocery workers, carpenters, runs the gamut. People who care about this agency and that care about it doing a good job, those are the folks that are supporting me. And that is because, like I told you, I've had BOLI on speed dial for a decade. I've spent tens of thousands of hours with the law that is enforced by this agency. And there's just nobody who's going to be better prepared on day one to do what needs to be done, which is to enforce our laws, our civil rights laws, not only in the workplace, but in housing and in public spaces, to enforce our wage and hour laws, and to connect our businesses connect our kids with apprenticeships. So that is why I'm really, really excited about this job. I don't know if you've done any research on me, you'll see that I've had a to-do list for BOLI for 10 years. Like, this is what I do for fun. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it's the job is pretty much tailor-made for me as somebody who is both a civil rights attorney and a small business owner. I'm going to have the perspectives on both sides that are going to help this agency, help Oregonians.
Awesome. Thank you both. And I think the next thing I have on my agenda says that I have to kick it off to Lisa.
Well, I'm going to also give it to Connie because this wouldn't have happened without Connie and Andrew Stifler, who is not here, and Kathy Dorner, who is here. So I think those 3 did an amazing job at putting this together. So thank you so much. I mean, I was kind of basically out of it because I was working days and nights. And so I just want to thank the 3 of them for just taking this on and taking that leadership. And thank you everyone for being here. I know there's a lot of other things happening tonight, a lot of other places you could be. And, I'd like to apologize for it being small, but anyway, it's kind of nice because we all get to ask questions. Connie, is there anything else you want to say, or Kathy?
Yes, if anyone would like a recording of this, I will have the link. You can send it either to Lisa or to me, and we'll send the link out to you with the recording. So we'll send it to the county chairs in case they could send it out to anyone who wanted to see it. But thank you both. It's a hard choice and you both are wonderful. I don't know what I'm going to do. Can we have co-bureau commissioners or co-commissioners? Because you both are awesome. So thank you for putting yourself out there and for running. I know it's never easy, and you both have done a great job tonight. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who came, because it wouldn't have been possible to be in person because people come from all over different counties. So that's why this is important. So thank you. Back to you, Lisa.
Well, yes, I'll say good night. And thank you again, Connie and Kathy Dormer and Andrew. And thank you for coming. And most of you are in CD-1, so we'll see you at the next CD-1 meeting or someplace.